Happy New Year and welcome to episode 112 of the SewRunKnits podcast. My name is Cori Eichelberger and I go by SewRunKnits on the internet. And iRock is just Cori spelled backwards because I knit in a rocker recliner. And I am a knitwear designer, author of 2 knitting pattern books, as well as a teacher who travels a bit to share my love and passion of knitting. I would say I am definitely obsessed and have to knit every single day. I was getting ready today. Do any of you do this? You get ready, you dry your hair a little bit with a hair dryer that is hot. The hot top of your head gets hot. And then you have to walk around your house for a while with just your bra on. Anybody else? Like, I almost sat down to podcast in my sports bra. I have on a pair of leggings, but I get so warm. And so my husband makes fun of me because he thinks I'm just hot all the time. But I said, and not like that. Not hot all the time. This is starting great. But I have a really powerful little tiny hair dryer. And I just turn my head upside down and dry my hair. My hair is, I don't have a lot, but it holds a ton of water. And so it takes a few minutes and my head gets so hot, you know, and you've just gotten out of a hot shower because I do like a really hot shower. And so then I walk around. Sometimes I even go outside and let Cody out the back door of the garage and like cool down quick. And today I was getting ready to sit down and I just had on my sports bra. So I saved you from all of that. Anyway, Happy New Year. I'm happy to be back with all of you. I do have some changes upcoming in the podcast, in the formatting of the podcast and what I'm going to be doing this year. I am working out some things. I am tired of the repetitiveness of how I do the podcast. And so if I'm tired, I assume you're tired too. Don't adjust your monitors. I am wearing gray. That never happens, but I have a new sweater that I purchased from the same website that I got my mom's sweater before Christmas. And I think that there's a possibility that this was machine knit. But is that not darling? Isn't that not darling? I mean, it's so cute. It would be intarsia, and these seams are just perfectly flat. So I assume that it was I do think it's a design on Ravelry by Irmian Designs. I will put the tag down here if it is, but I'm pretty sure that she sells these patterns, but I had to buy it. I'm not a huge fan of a dropped shoulder because I have bigger arms, and sometimes this seam on a drop shoulder can be a little tight. And I think some of you probably know that too from experiencing not having a deep enough armhole at that point. And then you don't want it to be too deep because it gets so sloppy. I think that a drop shoulder can be kind of sloppy, but anyway, so that's what I'm wearing today. I do think that I'm going to stop doing the recipes, but let's start with that today. This may be the last recipe that we share. I like sharing recipes, but it's just another thing that I have to look up and pick out. So the recipe of the week this week, I have a couple of things to share. So on Instagram, I saw a gentleman baking a cake, and he is a professional or home baker, and said that we all are over baking our cakes if we use the toothpick method. And I have been using the toothpick method all of my life. And where you stick a toothpick in, and if it comes out clean, your cake is done. And I think that's what my mom taught me. And so that's how I check. I don't bake cakes all that often, but I do bake bars and brownies and things occasionally. So I was kind of fascinated by watching this. And he said that if you are waiting until your toothpick comes out clean, it's too dry. Your cake is too done. It's too far gone. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating to me. So I thought I would share that with all you. This comes from No Flaky Salt on Instagram. And he says to poke your cake with a skewer and then put a thermometer in it. Don't use a toothpick. And you'll have an overbaked cake. It should be about 213 degrees. So go look at No Flaky Salt on Instagram and watch that little, you know, reel that he did about overbaked cakes. And then I saw a lady talking about sugar jars and salt and pepper jars. So if you have clear sugar jars or clear glass salt and pepper shakers, and they sometimes can get kind of gummed up at the top and they're not coming out, she showed a technique where you flip it over. If nothing's coming out or just a little bit, you're really having to shake. If you rub the two bottoms of the jars together, they have little indentations in the bottom, and that will loosen all of that. I love Instagram for that reason, right? Who knew? I have two little glass salt and pepper shakers. I wouldn't say they get gummed up all that time, but my sugar does. My sugar can get a little stuck in the thing. And so I have to like take it over to the sink and shake it, and then some of the thing flies out the spout, whatever. But apparently if you just turn it over and rub another glass around the bottom, there are little, what's a good word? Bumpy. There's a little bumpy surface around the edge. That's what it's for. I did not know that either. So here we go, sharing two things with you. The recipe that I have for you this week is what we're making tomorrow. Here in Minnesota, we're going to get a huge snowstorm. We are going to get 6 to 10 inches of snow. Knitting was canceled. We're going to do it on Zoom. And so we're going to make black bean and sweet potato chili. My husband just left to go to the grocery store. He noticed that my tire was leaking. And so he was out in the garage for a long time. I couldn't figure out why he was out there. And I went out and he said, I think you have a nail in your tire. Thank goodness for husbands who know a lot about car stuff, because within 20 minutes he had my tire off. And he's like, when I head to the grocery store, I'm going to drop your tire off. I would not have probably noticed a slow leak in my tire. I don't think of things that way. And yeah, so he was off to the grocery store with my tire, but he's going to pick up some ingredients. So this is just onion, green bell pepper, red bell pepper, jalapeno peppers, 2 medium sweet potatoes, garlic, chili powder, cumin, and then basil, bay leaf, diced tomatoes, vegetable or chicken broth, 2 cans of black beans. So it's basically a vegetarian dish. My husband does not love sweet potatoes, but if I cook them just right, he wouldn't just sit down to eat a sweet potato. But if I put them in other things and I caramelize them first in a pan with some olive oil, then he likes that better. So we're going to try that tomorrow, I think. He says he's willing. When he comes home, he may say, can we just make beef chili? I have shared my super duper beef chili recipe, which has beef and sausage in it, and it's a very interesting recipe. It has a jar of salsa and Velveeta cheese, and or any American cheese that melts. It doesn't have to be Velveeta, but you know, a meltable cheese. A cheddar can get so oily. It's got cream of mushroom soup. There you go again, Midwest cream of mushroom. So that is your recipe of the week this week, but I do think we are going to not do recipes anymore and just kind of move on from that. I've been doing it for quite a while. There are, I don't know, 100 episodes worth of recipes out there. And so I'm going to probably just kind of skim by that. I thought I would do a little end of year recap. I have mixed feelings about this. I am a person who likes to accomplish things and do checklists and check things off and make lists, and you know, so it is more about that for me, is that looking at the progress I have made. But I have just some numbers here that I thought I would share with everyone. And this is not to be in any way boastful or proud, because there are people who have done way more things that are far more important in the world than reading books and knitting projects, right? Let's save the oceans and that kind of thing, right? This is of not importance, but I read 95 books this year. I did not have a goal. I have just really been enjoying listening to audiobooks more and more, and doing that instead of other things. And, you know, like watching TV or being on Instagram. And so I just have really tried to just be plugged in all the time. And I have found that if the books I like that I'm reading are excellent, like if I really like them, I'm much more apt to go on to the next book. If I have a dud, I don't always give up. And then I would get bogged down in the, I don't want to read another dud, right? So it's just really helped me to kind of hone my listening. I can listen at 1.5 speed pretty easily now and not miss parts of the book. I've gotten much better at it. I knit 80 projects this year. I don't know how completely accurate that is. I may have missed one or two throughout the year. I try to put everything on Ravelry in all my notes, but I think it's interesting to see what I knit every year. I put a little tab on Ravelry. So when you're logging in your pattern, your project, you can click in the little tag and put 2023. So if you finish a project, if you put the year, then Ravelry will make you a little tab at the top of the page that says these are all the things you knit in 2023. So it makes it really easy, if you remember, to always put the date. And it doesn't do it if you put the date on the date part of that. You have to put it in your little tag. It's about, I don't know, 5 or 6 boxes down. And then you click over to the right of it, and it will tell you other things that people have tagged in that. So maybe the name of the author, the name of the pattern, what weight of yarn it is, you know, top down, V-neck, whatever, those kinds of things. So 2 pairs of mittens, 9 pairs of socks, 23 hats. So I need no more hats in my life. 2 scarves, 11 sweaters, 3 shawls, 7 cowls, 8 pillows, which I'm going to show you today, 3 dishcloths, 2 stuffies, 5 necklaces, and 1 poncho. So gosh, I don't think that adds up to 80. I just counted and tried to make a little, I went like this. Let's be honest. There was no database here. I just marked it out. So I think that's pretty accurate. But for me, what it was nice to see is that I had a wide variety of items. I love knitting mittens, and I only knit 2 pair. I like hats because they're super fast and quick, and everyone in my life got a hat for Christmas this year. But we recently cleaned out the back mudroom drawer. It's a kind of a deep drawer, and it's underneath a bench. So you pull it out, and it was full of mittens and hats and scarves, and we couldn't put any more in there. So we took everything out, and I paired up all the gloves and mittens, and I put a rubber band around them, the things we're not wearing, and I laid them out on the kitchen counter, and I said to Ross, as you walk by, grab what you want, because the rest is going in the box. And I just decided that I have enough hats to gift everybody a hat for next year, I think, for Christmas already. So I don't know. I probably will start making some more dishcloths for people, because I think people really like those as my kind of my hat palette cleanser. I just have a lot of single skeins of hat yarn, and so I like kind of always having a hat on the needles. But I gave everybody a hat this year, and I don't even know if they wanted them, but at this point it's like, whatever, put it in your car. Keep it in your car as I got stuck in the snow, and I came out and I had to clear it off. Right. And then I designed 4 items this year. So I went from 25 items the previous year, where I burnt myself out, and the very end of the year I did my pairs of socks collection. And so I had, 12 patterns in that collection right at the end of the year. And I just was like over it. I was like, wow, you designed way too much. And so this year I designed 4 patterns. I did the Legacy Park Shawl for the Minnesota Shop Hop. That's still one of my favorite crescent shawls. I did the Chim-in-ney socks in the DK and fingering weight in December. And I did the Christina cowl to match the Christina hat. Now, right now, currently, I think I have 12 designs kind of on the needles in progress, with notes everywhere in the office listing out, this is what you have to get done. I think I told you all I hired a new tech editor, and so I had promised her a couple of patterns in December, and that didn't happen. I didn't get them to her because I'm not good at one object completed, go on to the next. I am much better with multiple whips, multiple projects, multiple project bags. You all know that about me. And then I can finish a whole bunch of stuff at once, but I just can't work through one whole thing and then get it done. I don't know what it is about my brain, but that's how it works. And then I podcasted 23 times this year, and I did 7 special episodes or tutorials. I did a couple of Zoom I did one with Kylie. And I did some tutorials for my pattern. So I had 7 extra episodes, which is what I did on the last podcast. If you noticed, I had a little bit shorter podcast, and then I did the extras, which are the sayings that I say at the end of each podcast. And if you've been around the whole time, you know what those things mean. There's no necessary, you do not need to watch that one. But if you haven't been around the whole time and you haven't watched that podcast, yes, it will help you understand those sayings that I say at the end of each podcast and what they mean, and why we have just like a little insider thing for the IROC knitters over there. So yeah, that's what we have going on. Then I think I'm going to go right into some finished objects, because I have a ton. I knit a ton of stuff between Thanksgiving and Christmas. I finished quite a few things. It was my goal to finish a whole bunch of stuff and start the new year kind of getting fresh with what I need to finish next. And it's shocking how close I am on several sweaters. I was getting them out, kind of sorting them out. And that's the problem with me. I package stuff up and put it away, and then I don't get it back out. So I was looking at a sweater today, and I thought I had one more sleeve left. The sleeves are done. I have a cuff of about this much and a neckline, and that's it. So that will be done for the next podcast. But I finished a couple of these hats, and this is it's a Cookie Gate colorway from Chelsea Yarns a year ago. And I made this bulky, chunky hat with the Chelsea Yarns out of it, and I bought a bunch of kits. I thought I was going to make them up for everybody, and I was just getting these done because they work up so quickly. But I love the Chelsea Yarns Chunky. And this one is one of hers that came out in the fall. And so it's just a regular, and then it had the matching pom-pom that came with it. So I put the pom-pom on that one. And then this is the second little kit I had bought from her. Well, just skein of yarn, and then no pom-pom for this one. So I made one. I made a floppy pom-pom for this one. And that's, again, the Chelsea Yarns Chunky. It's pricey, but I love this yarn. Like, I want a sweater in this yarn because it's so fun. Like, this pom-pom is so fun. See how chunky that is? Yeah. And it's hand dyed. So I do believe in paying people for their time. But I had leftovers, and so I knitted up a little cabled cowl. And I think I'm going to write this one up as a pattern. So this one would match the hat. But it's just a small 1 skein project where you cable cross, and super easy, kind of fun to do. So I think that one will be written up as Cori's Chunky Cabled Cowl or something like that. We'll do that. And I have this to show. I finished Kylie's stocking. So her stocking got done. Put a little crocheted hook on it. And it does have the tree on both sides. It is a mirrored image, so you follow the chart and then you follow the chart backwards. It is written that way in the pattern. And then I'm to about here on Stevie's, and I could have knit on it on our trip to Sioux Falls, but I drew a polar bear, and so I have to show you how that went for me because it was a disaster. So Kylie had picked the blue stocking, but Stevie picked a red, white, and green stocking. That was his favorite, which I understand. Like, he probably wouldn't have loved this, although when he saw the Cardinal, I wasn't done with the foot when he saw it, he did really like it. But Kylie said, oh, Mom can just put a polar bear on yours. Right. So I found this pattern on Ravelry and I purchased it, and then I was gonna put this on. Well, it doesn't fit. They're not the same number of stitches between one and the neck. So then I tried to draw a polar bear using this as my schematic and just beefing one up, just beefing it up all the way around. And I thought I had the drawing here. I can't find it. It's not in the pattern anymore. So I must have thrown it away. It was horrific. It did not look like a bear. It looked like a fat dog. It was really bad. So then I kept working at it, and I found this on the internet, which is, basically like a cross, kind of a cross stitch pattern. And I traced around it on the back, and then I went into my Stitch Mastery program and I came up with this one. I'm not sure it looks much like a bear either. It's better. But it's not great, and it's too big. Now it's too wide for the stocking, so that didn't work. So then I went out and I bought a second bear stocking. So if anyone needs a bear stocking, because I thought maybe I could use these two. The problem is you don't know the cast on number before you buy the pattern. And I've just been struggling with this bear. So I can maybe take the tree out and have two bears butt to butt in this one and get it to fit on. But then I was looking at someone else's stocking, and this was a bear I blew up, and I think I could copy this. Do you guys think this bear is better? The brown bear looks better? I don't know. So that stocking has really stalled out. And at this point, I would just like to say, you know what? You're getting snowflakes, dude. But I will keep plugging away on my charting software and see if I can't. I could probably stream this one back down, the big one. This is my charting software. And I could probably go around and take the perimeter off and see if I can't get it to be small enough to fit on the stocking. But anyway, that was a hot mess express. And I spent, you know, more time looking at patterns and trying to draw it than if I would have just been able to just knit it, it would have been done. So I would like to get that off the needles, and not that they're going to get it for Christmas anymore at this point. Okay, and then I'm going to insert a bunch of pictures because I have shown these little pillows that are going to come out here as a pattern. And this is the Knitwords pillows in miniature, so they're minis. But for some of my friends for Christmas, I knit up their Ravelry names in pillow form and put pom-poms on the end. So I will put some of those pictures in here. They're kind of long sachets. I can't do smell at my house because my husband has a lot of sensitivity to smell. So I couldn't put any essential oils or like lavender in them or anything, but I figured the people who got them could certainly put, you know, some lavender oil, some essential oil, whatever their favorite smell is on it. But I could have figured out, I could have left a hole and put some cinnamon in, and then as I was about to get them or whatever, but I did not do that. So I made amber one and a matte one, and my friend Renee, because we got together and had a little brunch, Matt and Renee and I, and my friend Suzanne and my friend Bonnie. Definitely people who have Ravelry names that are interesting. I'm not really sure I'd want one that said Cori on it, but I probably will make one that says SewRunKnit. It's just mostly for their knitting room, or they can sit it in a chair and kind of look at it and know that I knit a little something for them. So I did get all of those knit up, and that took quite a bit of time the week right before Thanksgiving and the week after Thanksgiving to get those all. They knit up pretty fast. I knit them at a bigger gauge. If I was going to do them again and I had more time, I would probably knit them at the tighter gauge because some of the stuffing kind of shows through unless you knit. If you're going to really stuff something like a stuffy, you want to knit it at a smaller gauge, but I wanted them to work up quick. And so some of the stuffing showed through, but whatever. It is what it is. So I got that Christmas stocking done, and pillows for people and hats for people. My dad got a hat this year. I don't think I've ever knit my dad a hat. So he put it on right away. And I gave my mom her sweater. So I have a picture that I will put in of the two of them in front of their fireplace. We did get to go to South Dakota. I might insert just a little Cori stories here. So we were planning to go the week before Christmas, and Sioux Falls got 9 inches of snow, and then they continued to get like 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. And so we couldn't go to South Dakota, and we kind of waited and watched the weather, and it looked like we were going to get weather last Thursday, which we didn't end up getting much weather, but so we decided to go down on Tuesday. And over that weekend, a friend sent me a picture because they literally closed the highways. They have these big barricade gates. South Dakota is so flat. I mean, southwestern Minnesota is too, but it's so flat that if the wind picks up, it does not have to be currently snowing to kind of be in a blizzard condition, because the wind will blow the snow so far and so fast sideways. So a friend sent me this picture to just show you why we could not go. You can't go to Sioux Falls in a snowstorm. It's just the most incredible picture. It had drifted in. That is not actual accumulated, just flat snowfall. It had drifted under this bypass, and they closed the highway. And I saw a State Patrol video of a trucker who was going down, I think it was I-90, which is the major interstate, and did not know that the road, they have big flashing signs and stuff, but he blew through the barricade. It's like a railroad crossing arm, and he blew through it, and the State Patrol guy is sitting there to make sure people don't go around it, because then they have to go save people. And the State Patrol guy was like backing up as fast as he could, because he could see this truck kind of coming through the snow, and yeah, scary situation. So anyway, and then we did get to go to Sioux Falls, and I didn't get to see my brother and his wife. It was her birthday, and it was like a really quick trip. We couldn't decide what day to go, and we didn't know what day we were going. And then finally Ross has just said, let's just go tomorrow morning. And so we just threw some stuff in a suitcase, and we went back down on Tuesday and came back on Wednesday. Like it was because we wanted to not drive in the dark. That's another thing. You just don't want to drive when it's too dark, because the deer are out and they're foraging. And so, that can be in the flatlands where the cornfields are. They're in the cornfields looking for, under the snow, they're looking for grain and corn. And so, yeah, it was a very quick trip down and back. I did see my sister-in-law and my other brother quickly. They stopped at my mom and dad's right before we left to come back. And so I got to see them, but I didn't see the little girls, and I wanted to see them because I wanted to give them their presents, but we texted and they didn't get back to us before we left. So didn't get a chance to see them. Pressed flowers shawl. And that was a whole issue in and of itself, because I ran out of yarn. So I saw this woman knitting this shawl on Instagram or Ravelry in these colors. And I decided that I wanted those colors. I had seen one at up at Bee Woolen, and I loved their colors too, but I decided to order this particular yarn. And the woman had only used 4 skeins, 2 pink, 2 green, I believe. And she had put a note at the bottom that at the end, she got really close to running out of yarn, and so she had to shorten it. And if you notice that the flowers get closer and closer together in the last few rounds right here, so they get real close. And then there's just really a tiny little kind of a bind off situation right at the end. And I really just didn't like the look of it. I assume that, hey bud, Cody's right here. I have some stuff to tell you about him. He's doing okay. But yeah, you want to go lay under the table? You want to go lay under? So I decided that I would order another skein of the pink, because I think that she was probably trying to make the largest shawl she could with 4 skeins of yarn. It's DK weight, which gives you, roughly, let's just say 800 yards, not quite. But maybe people just didn't want to spend the money for the extra skein. But the yarn I got was from the UK. And it was Christmas time. And so I had to wait. And I just, had to. So I got the pink yarn and I added it to the bottom of the shawl to make the shawl kind of, and this is a gigantic shawl. If you haven't seen it before, there's also a sweater out that matches. It came out in August of 2020. It became very popular. And the note here is, what good is the warmth of summer without the cold of winter to give it its sweetness? John Steinbeck, Travels with Charlie, which I think is so true. Minnesotans are so thankful for spring and summer because we have such harsh winters. But her comment is, my attempt at preserving all the green grass and flowers for when I really need a little sunshine in the depths of winter. So I loved that that was on there, which is why I wanted it to look like green grass and flowers. And I think it turned out very nice. There you go. Goes all the way over here. So as you can see, it's giant. It's DK. And it's all slip stitches. So once you've done a few flowers, I took a class from Ann Weaver. I told you all about that, to learn how to do the slip stitches and the technique of this. Just mostly because I wanted to take a class with Ann Weaver. I followed her for years. I think I told you guys that story on the podcast, but she had so many good tips and tricks about this particular shawl and what to do to make it an easier knit, kind of a better knit. So I did take her advice on a lot of that. And then I finished this last night. And I decided instead of doing a sweater and a shawl, I was going to do this week. It is a cowl, and it is brilliant. It is so much fun. This is called Konkon, and it is by Olga Jazzy, who does a ton of 3D knitting designs. Very, very interesting, geometric, 3D knitting. I taught at an event once where she was also teaching, and we never even got to meet because we were both, you know, teaching classes. We were so busy. I think we kind of said hello and that was about it, but we didn't get to like sit down and purchase this as a kit from Stephen B. And the kit was quite pricey, as some of Stephen B's stuff is. He really sources beautiful yarns, and I loved this colorway when I saw it, the black and white with the red fuzzy yarn. So it took 2 skeins of Big Bad Wool Baby Yeti and 2 skeins of Big Bad Wool Wee Paka. And you cast on and do a folded edge, and then you 3 needle bind off that together, and then you knit like 7 rows. And you put the I-cord through later, but I decided I wanted to put the I-cord in as soon as I was doing my folded edge. So I knit my I-cord. I did a little provisional cast on the end so that I could add length to the I-cord later. And then I laid my I-cord in there as I was 3 needle bind on. And I do think that it wouldn't have been too hard to slide that through there if you had like a big safety pin, but I just thought, you know what? When I get done, I'm going to be happy that I did it that way. And I was. So I got done, and my ends were probably each this long. I had just left enough to kind of get me around. I had a live end and then the provisional. So then I had to add this much and do the little pom-poms on the end. And then this is a slip stitch pattern. So basically you are slipping and then knitting, slipping, knitting. So you're only working with one yarn at a time, and you knit the red poms on like a size 9, and you knit the black and white on like a size 6, since you have to switch back and forth. And then you knit, just plain, and then you slip and knit and slip and knit, and then you purl these pom-pom. So you knit the first and then you purl these, and it was just so much fun. I knit this in the car on the way home, and I didn't want to get back. Like, I wanted to keep knitting. I made my cowl 1 row shorter because I'm short and I don't have a real long neck, and I just thought it was wide enough. I probably could have even gone 1 shorter, but I wanted to use up quite a bit. I have quite a bit of yarn left, more than I would have thought, left over of both colors. Not as much of the black, but quite a bit of the red left over. And I put my notes but it was confusing for me because I thought you cannot slip those stitches in between for that many rows, right? Like, you cannot continue to slip and slip and slip and slip up 7 or 8 rows, right? For the height of that pom-pom, but it causes the pom-pom to like squish and poof out. I mean, you can tell that they're poofing out, which is lovely. And then she did have a video. If you want to do a dip stitch in between. You can dip down and pull the yarn through on the section where you've done the slip stitches so that the pom-poms even, or the balls or whatever you want to call them, stick out even more. And so I did do that because you could leave it, you could just knit plain, or in that first row after you've completed the red balls, you can dip and pull a stitch up, and that I did. And once I watched the video, it was super simple. You just stick your needle back and on the back side, back down behind. Yeah, so I just think it's so cute. And they're all different colors out there that people have knit. This pattern came out quite a while ago and I had just never seen it. So December of 21. So, you know, well, not like years ago, but I hadn't seen it all of last year. And when I saw it, I thought, oh, it's so cute. So there is the Konkon. I hope you all make one. I also think it would be fun to make it with like just like mohair and a thicker yarn. So like if you had like a chunky, like a Aran maybe weight and like a DK, you could probably put mohair with this and maybe some like sequins and have those stick out. I don't know. I just think there are lots of options for it, but I think it will be fun to wear. Oh my goodness. We had 2 pages of podcast notes to discuss today, and I just flipped over to page 2 and we're 42 minutes in. So I'm going to have to put a little rush on it here. I was thinking about New Year's resolutions and kind of New Year's intentions and words, and I don't usually do that too much. Like I don't, well, every year I make a decision that I probably should eat better, eat more healthy, because I come out of the holidays and I'm such a sugar fiend. And then I get that craving every day where I have to have some sugar. And so I feel better when I don't have that. But I have decided, we're going to kind of do another little Cori stories here. I had some tummy trouble before Christmas for a few weeks. It wasn't pretty. And I've had this before. I do have IBS. I have fibromyalgia. I have arthritis, and depression. So, you know, I take a couple of medications, and when I hurt, if I take ibuprofen, I can get an upset tummy, which had happened. And so I kind of put it off as that. But then I was sick, like just did not feel well. And I was sleeping all the time. Like I was sleeping and then sleeping during the day, taking a nap in the afternoon for a couple of hours. And so I thought, oh, I have a virus. And Ross thought too. He said, you just are sleeping all the time, and you know, for a few days, you're just not doing well. And I got really dehydrated. I couldn't, you know, my lips were super dry and I just couldn't keep enough. I was trying to eat because it would make me feel better temporarily, and then it doesn't. Anyway, too much information. But we were having a conversation on the way to Sioux Falls, and I said to him, I feel like I need to go gluten-free 100% again. My doctor had told me that I was not celiac. I've had multiple colonoscopies and endoscopies over the years, and I've had C. diff. And I just think that, well, and the doctor had said, you probably can go back to gluten. If you give your body a rest from it for a while, you can develop an intolerance, but sometimes just giving your colon, your stomach a rest, you know, and that's kind of what had happened to me. Like Ross got kind of tired of eating gluten-free. And I have to say that is an excuse I used to allow gluten back in. I let him be the scapegoat. So that's kind of what I was saying, you know, well, Ross just isn't really happy. He would say, are these my noodles or your kind of noodles, right? And I took that as he doesn't want my kind of noodles. And I didn't want to make both kinds of noodles. And he didn't always like the pasta that was gluten-free. And when I first went gluten-free in 2015, there weren't quite as many products as there are today. It has gotten so much better. It's a little bit easier. And so I said to him, I really think I should start. And he agreed right away. I said, not only have I put on weight from having all these surgeries and dang it, sitting around, so some of my clothes don't fit, which bothers me. And the extra weight on my knees and my hip replacement is not great. And so my lower half is just roly-poly. And I thought, when I was gluten-free, I lost like 25 pounds. And so if I could feel better, make this tummy thing go away, and lose some of the excess weight that I had put on, I might feel all over just better. Because I will say, I've been walking a little outside and my feet and ankles and knees hurt. And I don't think that that's just my lack of exercise. I think that that's because I'm carrying probably 40 or 50 extra pounds. If you looked at like, if you looked at like what a doctor's whatever, if you went to, let's say, Weight Watchers or whatever, and they said, this is your, I probably never been, I've always been pretty muscular. But anyway, all that to say, I've decided to go all back in on being gluten-free. So I sent Ross to the store when we got back. We ate out while we were in Sioux Falls and I ate gluten-free, which sometimes gluten can still, but I'm feeling so much better already. My tummy is settling down. It's not gone, but it is much better. And so I picked up a few things that are more gluten-free. We went out with friends over the weekend. It was pretty easy to find a gluten-free option. So I'm just gonna see how that goes. It's just another reminder to me, the new year, of being kind to the body that I have, because it's not a perfect body. It has a lot of its own issues, and I need to treat it as well as I can so that it treats me well back, if that makes sense, right? I've already been through so many surgeries, and I think that for me, if for those of you that are new, or if you have never heard before, gluten is highly inflammatory, especially gluten in the United States. It's just highly inflammatory. So it can make your joints ache. It can make autoimmune issues worse. And that's what I had. I was just having chronic all over pain. Every body part hurt every morning when I'd wake up. I was just hurting. I was crabby. I wasn't feeling well. I was sleeping. It's kind of that cyclical that I went through a couple years ago, and I didn't put two and two together that the gluten might be part of and it could be other things too, like sugar or caffeine or whatever it is for different people too. So just, a little more clean eating at my house, a little more conscious of what, of how much bread I was putting in my body, how much wheat I was putting in my body. So all that to say to all those gluten-free folks out there, or if you have an autoimmune and you have a lot of pain and inflammation and that kind of thing, talk to your doc about gluten-free. I don't know. It really did make me feel better. It takes about 2 weeks, I would say 12 days, where then I really noticed in the past when I've done this twice before. So I just have to stick with it, maybe long term, and really realize how much better I'll feel. But let's see. In 2 weeks when I come back on the podcast, let's see how much better I'm feeling. And maybe you guys could hold me to that a little bit. Be supportive in the that's a good thing for you. Yeah, I'm really super motivated. Like, I just want to feel better. Definitely. I want to get along better, not hurt, not have all my joints hurt and all that. On and on and on. But one of the things that for the new year that people are doing is they're taking a jar and some Post-it notes, and they're leaving it in their kitchen. And then when something happens in your week that you're grateful for, something good happens, you have good news, you get together with a friend, whatever, you jot it on that Post-it note, and you fold it and you stick it in the jar. So that at the end of the year, you can see your jar full of blessings, so it's very visible. And I don't know, I might do that. I might start doing that for a while, just a little gratitude. I try to be grateful for everything I have because I am fully blessed, but I thought that might be fun to share. Then I also saw, and I'm going to try to put a little bit of a video in for all of you to see too. There is a Instagram person called Barn Burner Mending, and she did a Swiss darning or duplicate stitch video that was fascinating to me. Do you know how if you get like a single stitch hole in a sweater, you can, you know, stitch over it, weave in your end, and you could save it, right? This is a whole section, and her technique was fascinating to me. So I will link that in the show notes, but I also will try to put it in here because it was magnificent. When my mom ripped that sweater that I made for her right in the front, when she cut open the package with the scissors, that when I sent her the sweater and I had to mend that, I wish I would have had this video in that moment. I hope that none of you will ever need to use this video, but if you do, and if you're on Instagram, you know how you can save a video? You go down to the 3 dots in the right-hand corner and you click on those, and then there's a heart save button. It'll save it to your phone forever and ever. And I save all technique videos on Instagram. Anything that's a technique, I save it because it usually will say on the cover what it is, you know, weaving in your ends, picking up stitches, whatever. If I see a good technique video on Instagram, I save it so that I can have it for later. And that's one of these that I would definitely think about doing. Okay, what have I been watching? Well, I finished watching all of the tattoo show. So, you know, Master Ink. That was really fun to watch. But Ross and I have been watching Yellowstone. I still hate it. I think they're terrible people, but I also can't look away. I do like Rip. Ross and I watched Father Stew. It came on a recommendation from some people at his work. Wouldn't recommend. I thought it was kind of anticlimactic. It's about a guy who's kind of gotten in trouble in his life, and he decides to become a priest, and it's really, really out of character for him. At the beginning, he's after a girl who's a Catholic, and then he goes back to school, and then and then something sad happens. I just found it to not have a lot of punch. It was okay. We watched it, but let me know in the comments if you watch Father Stew and you have a different opinion. Then someone recommended Saving the Manor, and it's these 2 men who bought a manor and they are restoring it. And I watched the first episode. It was great. I really liked it. And then I found out it's on, like, I can't remember, maybe HBO. But I would recommend that if you have HBO. I think it's HBO. I didn't write it down. But it's called Saving the Manor. If you like watching people restore stuff, it was really, the episode that I watched was really good. Then I watched season 3 of Emily in Paris. It's terrible. The writing, the whole premise of season 3 was flippant and light, but I love that show. I love the fashion. I love the girls, their energy, but I thought it was not as good as previous seasons. And I think that that's kind of the information that we're getting out there, that it really wasn't it's not as good. The writing just didn't seem, I don't know. The characters are kind of quirky. Maybe that's just the way it's supposed to be, but I watched the whole thing. Then I'm catching up on The Crown. I don't know. The Crown makes me super sad. I cannot watch it. I have a little bit of that empath in me. I just feel so bad for Diana. I watched the Harry and Meghan series. I have really mixed feelings about that whole thing. You know, I have that whole saying at the end of the don't complain with your mouth full. Their mouths are really full and they're doing a ton of complaining. But I also think they were treated horrifically. And I think Diana was treated horrifically. And I think they're told what to do with every breath of every day. And that is so wrong. So I go both ways, right? I think they treated Meghan Markle horribly. I do think they ran them out of the country. But they are also people of great privilege. They're doing a lot to give back. So I don't know. Talk to me in the comments about that one too. Then I watched My Unorthodox Life, and I had watched the first season last year and talked to you guys about it. Since I was in high school, have been fascinated with the very Orthodox Jews. I have read books. I found it just so interesting. Maybe as a Christian, the laws that they follow, the rules that they follow, the lack of any rights the women have. And My Orthodox Life is the exact opposite of that, right? It's very, very flamboyant, very out there, but so good, so fascinating. These people have great, great wealth. She left Muncie, New York, where a lot of the Orthodox people live, and still has a relationship with her husband, who is now remarried. She divorced him. And then she built a shoe empire. So she has tons of money. And she has these 3 children that stay with her. And then she has this son who is still wants to be Orthodox. And it's a reality TV following them. But I just find all of the parts about their Jewish culture really interesting. I also watched that show Unorthodox, which was the one, like the movie about the lady. If you've never watched anything like that, where they have to cover their hair and wear the wig and they're not told about sex before marriage, and they get married at 16, 17, 18 years old, and they don't know anything. That was fascinating. That was the movie Unorthodox. But the show is My Unorthodox Life. And yeah, fascinating. Really interesting. And then yesterday, you guys, we watched the Vikings lose, which was super sad for me. We played the worst game I've ever seen in football history. We should have not shown up with as good as we played, so whatever. But then afterwards, I was really down. And my friend Jan at Knitting had said that she watched this show over break. And so I was like, well, it's about Christmas, but I'll watch it. So I started it at, 7 o'clock, and I was up until like 1:30. I watched all 6 episodes. It's called A Storm for Christmas. It is dubbed, so you have to go in and put it in English. It was so good. It's all these people at an airport trying to get home for the holidays, trying to get from point A to point B. And they follow the different characters, and they're all extremely different. And it wasn't Hallmarky, really. There's a girl at a bar, and there's a woman priest that works and you follow her. And then there's this couple who argue all the time with their daughter, and they're bickering, and so you follow them. There's a Santa Claus at the airport, and he's angry and bitter and has a very foul mouth. So I wouldn't recommend this for small children. But he's right. I mean, he's angry. So you follow, and then it jumps to someone else. There's this pianist, this fantastic pianist who has kind of lost his career and doesn't have a passion for the music anymore. There's a woman who's trying to get her son to New York to have an eye operation because he's going blind. So you follow all these people, and there were 6 episodes, and it was so good. It was so good. A Storm for Christmas. They have a huge snowstorm. All the flights are canceled for 20 some hours, and they're all stuck in different parts of the airport, and you follow them. It was really good. Highly recommend. Even though it's Christmas, I mean, Santa's in it, but it's not a Christmas movie, not a Christmas show. I mean, they are trying to get somewhere for Christmas, but it doesn't have that underlying, it could happen anytime in Minneapolis airport with a snowstorm and follow the people. Very, very good. Okay, I have a couple things that I saw on the internet that I would like to share. So I have these lovely socks, which are super cute. They're called Burning Stripes. Look at that, sock knitters. If you are looking for a sock pattern, I found that to be really, really fun. So this was, came out in 2010. It's called Burning Stripes. It is knit on a US 1. It's just a simple sock pattern that is lit with excitement generated by easy bright stripes in long color rungs. Boomerang heel looks trickier, but is easier than a standard short rail heel and a striped toe. I just found that heel to be so fascinating looking. And so this is an older pattern, and I thought it would be really fun to see the different, it's the way that one's striped that I just thought was so cool. So Burning Stripes, and that is by Susan Looney, and it was published in 3 Sleeves to the Wind. So recommend that one. And then the other one I saw was called Brainless, and it was by Yarnissima, and it doesn't have a date on it. Let me see, is there, oh, 2009, so super old, but isn't that interesting? Super fun. So if you're a sock knitter looking for a fun sock pattern, Brainless and Burning Stripes are both free. One of the reasons that I saw them is because they came up on a free sock thing. And if you're looking for a free pattern, I just thought that they both had really interesting construction, didn't look too difficult, but something going on. So 2 sock patterns. Then I saw this canopy scarf by Maria Isa Ava. Came out in November, but this is the Sophie scarf that's not garter. Why didn't I think to look for that? Because I knit a couple of the Sophie scarves, but this is just the Sophie scarf in stockinette, or I think it's stockinette. Oh, it's double knit. The whole scarf is double knit, and increases and decreases are made in the beginning and the end of the scarf. It's graded to 3 lengths, one that goes around your neck, one that goes twice around your neck, and one that goes 3 times around your neck. Fingering, 2 fingering weight, held double, or DK. So it's the same kind of concept, size 6 needle. Anyway, so I thought I would share that because I will be making a stockinette Sophie instead of the garter. I mean, I did like the garter. Doesn't happen very often, but I did like the garter. I saw Christmas socks. I know it's after Christmas. I know it's too late, but if you did not see these, they are called the Vintage Christmas Light Socks, and they are so cute. Aren't they darling? So I'm going to put that in my notes on Ravelry. I might even make a project page and start that like next November. I think that they would be really fun to knit. They were on sale. I don't think they are anymore because this is a couple of days old. Gray Owl Knits and Vintage Christmas Light Socks. So cute. People are so brilliant. So brilliant. And then, did everyone see either on Instagram or it was picked up by the news? It was picked up by a guy that is a songwriter. There was a little African-American boy, I think in Africa, singing a song called A Beautiful Day. It's a beautiful day, and I thank God for the pain and the, oh my gosh. It was, I'll put a little bit in. And then there was a gentleman, because people were calling for us to find this little boy, like to find him because he's singing this little song. And it's just pure. It's just pure. And they were saying, somebody needs to find him. They need to put music to the song because he's just singing a cappella. And so this guy is fabulous. So it's called A Beautiful Day. And it was on Instagram. It was a reel. And the guy that I saw it on was the real MJ Hanks. He was the producer or music guy that made the music for this little boy once it had gone. It was on Upworthy. If you follow Upworthy, it's like all the good stories of the day. If you get really tired of like negative stuff, news and stuff, you can follow Upworthy and they will just send you good stories every day. So that was kind of fun. So I wanted to share that with all of you.
Lord, I thank you for sunshine, thank you for rain, thank you for joy, thank you for pain. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day.
Then I have a little update on a podcast viewer who has been with me since the very beginning. And I do think that I shouted out and said well wishes to her. But she sent me a note that said her surgery went well. It took about 10 hours. She did have more damage than they thought. She has to go to rehab. Her right side and leg did not work. And so the doctor said it was because her spinal cord was being crushed. And they don't know how long it had been like that. And I just want to send out my deepest well wishes to Janet, saying, Janet, I hope that you're doing okay now. I hope you're doing better. I hope that rehab is going well. I know you have your daughter to help take care of you. I wanted to thank you because I told her, please let me know how it goes, because I knew it was a big surgery she was having. And so, Janet R., I just want you to know that I really appreciate you sending me the note after surgery, and I have been praying for you because that back and spinal stuff is scary, scary stuff, right? Yes. Okay. Then I had a podcast watcher, Polly. Hi, Polly. Reach out. I think it was Polly. Yeah, reach out and say, I'm gonna have to look at the comments now, and say, would I be willing to have a sock knit along? He feels like I have designed a bunch of cool socks, and he thought maybe that SewRunKnits should have a sock knit along. And I don't always have the best success with knit alongs on this podcast. I mean, I have a pretty big following, but I think it's hard for people to jump on board, but maybe with socks, it would be okay. So he recommended the hashtag IROC socks 23 for 2023. And I have prizes, no problem. So I have prizes and things to give away. And so let's do a knit along let's at least start in January, February, and March. And I will give prizes away on every podcast for anyone who knits a pair of SewRunKnits design socks. So I have the whole pairs of socks collection. I have the Up North cabin socks, which are DK weight. I have the Shanana Friends, not Friendship Road, Shanana Friends socks. I have the Mr. Tom's Field socks. I have the new Chim-in-ney socks. So I have a number of pairs of socks that you could participate with. Almost all of them are easy that I have written. They're top down. You can put any heel, toe, and cuff in it that you want, but it needs to be one of my sock patterns. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. That feels really supportive to me that someone would suggest that I do that and then recommend, using my patterns. That makes me feel really good. So, okay. Then I have an oops. Not every podcast I make a mistake, but sometimes I make a mistake. I was talking about a yarn dyer here in Minnesota, and I said Knitter's Nightmare, and the yarn dyer was really Cyborg's Craft Room. And she is the one who had passed away a number of years ago, and she was an indie dyer. But in my mind, Cyborg's Craft Room and Knitter's Nightmare got confused, and I said Knitter's Nightmare. And I said that she had passed away. And Knitter's Nightmare is Sadie. And Sadie is alive and well in Canada and has 2 little children and has a podcast. She had one for a long time. Then she took a break. She lived in the US. She lived in Minnesota. And so did the Cyborg's Craft Room person. So I, in my head, I just got them wrong. And so I want to sincerely apologize for anyone who thought that the other person had passed away, because that was not the case. Okay. Sadie. Hello, Sadie. She's doing fine. I watched Sadie's podcast for years. She lived here for a little while. I just mixed up in my head, and I'm just talking off the cuff here, and it didn't dawn on me until later when someone said, wait a second, Sadie passed away? And I was like, no. How did I do that? So making an oopsie here. All right, let's do the audiobooks of the week. I watched do I have it over there? I'm going to look there. I'm not seeing it. It should be here. No, it's not here. And I'd have to... I'm going to knock that over. That's not what I meant to do. As a part of the audiobook section, I know a lot of you love books, and some of you don't read the kinds of books I read, or you don't read as much as I do, but I wanted to share that Amy Beth of the fatsquirrelfibers.com is doing a bag update with the library card bags, which are hard to come by, right? So she's done it before, and I have a library card bag. I thought it was hanging in my tree, but it's not. So it's in the closet, and I'm not gonna dig for it right now, but I'll try to put a picture in. And the library cards are on the fabric. So if you want a library card bag, which I loved getting mine because then you get to see which the library card titles were on there. So that was really fun. But if you want a library card, you could go over and see if she was doing pre-orders today. I think that they were going up. So if you're this early, January 2nd, 3rd, 4th of 2023, you could probably get one of her bags if you're a book lover. Then I was looking at the 10 best books video that the New York Times does every year. So they did the top 10 best books of 2022, and that's on YouTube. And that was an excellent little 50-minute program where each of the editors spoke about one of the books. So they did 5 nonfiction, 5 fiction. In the beginning, they talk about the process and how they narrow it down and how hard it is to narrow it down to 5 books of the year. But I did watch that, and so I'll put it's on YouTube. I'll put the link in the show notes, and I would recommend that. I also wrote down what the 5 books are for you, so I will put those in the show notes. The nonfiction books are An Immense World, Stay True, Strangers to Ourselves, Under the Skin, and We Don't Know Ourselves. The 5 fiction books of the year are Trust, The Candy House, Demon Copperhead, The Furrows, and Check Out 19. So those are listed with the author in the show notes because I made a list because I was putting it in my Goodreads to look up more of the description to see if I would want to read each of those. But then I also, after you do that, then on your computer, I saw a YouTube thing come up that was the NPR staff picks, which is Minnesota Public Radio. And I thought, oh, I might like to look and see what they picked. So their staff picks, so I think there were probably, I don't know, maybe 8 staff members who each picked 1, 2, or 3 books, and then they gave a synopsis, which is really nice. So I read through all those. That's an article, so I have that linked in here as well. And then I put those in my Libby app and put them in my wish list, my future to be read, those that I wanted to read. So I thought I would share that. Okay, I did 4 books this time. And the first one I finished was called Jayber Crow by Wendell Berry. This is quite an old book. It came out in 2007. It literally has been on my reading list for years. From the simple setting of his own barbershop, Jayber Crow, orphan, seminarian, and native of Port William, recalls his life and the life of his community as it spends itself in the middle of the 20th century. Surrounded by his friends and neighbors, he is both participant and witness as the community attempts to transcend its own decline. This is just a lovely, soft, gentle, sad, inspirational story. It's just one of those narratives. It took me longer to listen to. No murder, no sex, no foul language, it was just a lovely, lovely story. If you like books like that, where you're just following a character, telling about his whole life, and how he went from being an orphan to going to the seminary, then leaving the seminary, then going to this town to becoming a barber, and staying and help that he received from people. It was really a lovely book. I recommend it. It was 14 hours, so it's quite a big book. And it definitely does have this section that is Christian based. So I just want to put that out there. Okay. Then I listened to Bitter is the New Black by Jennifer Lancaster, and I am done with Jennifer Lancaster. It came up in my Libby. I didn't really pay attention to who wrote it. It started, and right away I was like, oh, she is so flippant and kind of negative, but funny and naughty and filthy. But I feel wrung out by the time I'm done. So Bitter is the New Black. Obviously, it's going to be full of sarcasm and bitterness, right? And then I read Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. I'm loving this trilogy. It is a romance, and it is very sexual. There's not a ton of sex. It's not an entirely sexual book, and it's not like heaving breasts and loins, right? It's not like that, but it's quite explicit in its explanation of some of the sex in the book. The stories are phenomenal. I'm just really thinking that, okay, I can be kind of a prude. I don't want to be a prude. I want to be part of the whatever sexual revolution or whatever, but I just think there would be some people that be turned off by the explicit sex, and they'd miss the best part of this author, who's telling incredibly diverse stories. Just so good. So highly, highly recommend. The stories are phenomenal. I'm right now on the third one, and I can hardly stop listening. She just does a tremendous job of telling a great story. So Talia Hibbert, all the Brown girls, it's the 3 Brown sisters. And then she's written some other stuff too, which I will definitely read. She just does a fantastic job of telling. And they're African-American women as the main character. I told you about the one who has fibromyalgia. The second book that I finished, this one had autism in it. And she just does a great job. So highly recommend. And then I started, and it got taken back, the book From the Ashes, and I'm getting it back now. This is an indigenous Native American story of kids growing up in poverty and then overcoming. I thought I was just going to be like, whatever. I didn't quite finish. I was close. But then I thought, I'm just going to put it on hold and see how long it takes to get here. And like 2 days later, it popped up. So now I just have that little bit of the end to finish. It is sad the way that we treated Native Americans in this country. And this isn't from a long time ago. This is more current. But how they grew up, how their mother left them, and then their father came and took them away, and he was a drug addict, and how they had no food, and then they go into foster, and then their mother comes back for a little while. You know, it's that kind of story, but also I think really good to read those kind of stories. So 4 books this week in the last 2 weeks, and that's what I read. So I did not share this in November, but I had a bad mammogram, and you know, one of those situations where you never know what people have going on in their life. This has happened to me a number of times in my life. I'm going to be very upfront about it. I think we need to talk about these things. I have dense breast tissue. And so I also am very cystic. And so I will get a bad mammogram image. When I lived in Virginia, I had 2 years of continual scares. I would go in, they would check it, they would call me back, I would have an ultrasound, I would do an x-ray, then they would aspirate a whole bunch of cysts. And then at one point I actually had to have a lumpectomy and have that removed. And it was fairly large, and then it came back as nothing. So there's a part of me that goes, I'm always good. It always comes back good. But then there's always a part of you that says this could be the time that you're going to have breast cancer. And I do not. I am so thankful, but I had to go back in, and I had to go during a snowstorm, and I didn't want to cancel because I didn't want to wait any longer right before the holidays. But I went back in and I had the ultrasound, and then, you know, the woman says, I'm going to step out of the room and have the radiologist just read that. And then either I will come back or he will come back with me and we'll explain, you know, and she's just done it. And you're thinking, oh, here we go. And you're stressed. You're looking at the ceiling. And she came back and she said, it's just a cyst. It will probably go away. We just need to watch it. You'll be fine. All that to say, get them checked. Check your own. Man or woman, you need to check yourself. I have too many women in my life who have gone through this. You need to check your girls. So please, if you have not had a mammogram, I made Amber go last year. Anyway, you need to go. You need to go and check and get the girls checked and make sure that you're taking care of yourself, because breast cancer is so curable if it's caught early. So I just wanted to share that little bit with everyone. I know some of you have gone through that as well. We have a giveaway this week, and we are giving away the pin and the stitch holder and the little tin, and that goes to commenter number 22 and the comments, and that is Tammy Carter. So Tammy, congratulations. I will put one of my little hot pink envelopes in the mail to you. They were all out of orange, so last time I had to buy hot pink. So if you get something from me ever, you'll know if it's coming in orange or hot pink. But I'm going to have giveaways for every podcast going forward. I did some sorting of some yarns at my house, and some stitch markers and some needles and some things like that. So I'm going to have some bigger giveaways. So this week's giveaway is a skein of unique yarn, which is this. This is a brown self-striping. This is extra fine superwash merino fingering weight, and the unique yarns donate trees. For every skein that is bought, they plant a tree in Africa. It prevents soil degradation, but provides food, marketable products, and fuel wood for families, increasing their income by 400%. So this is the skein that I'm giving away. I believe in their cause. And I also have a package of chibi needles to go with that, because I don't think you can ever have enough of these because they get lost all the time. And then as part of my advent calendar, I got this mug, and I won't use it. I think it's super cute, but I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna pass it on. So it is a little bear sleeping, and it is one of those insulated cups. And I just don't drink much out of a cup like this that would keep it cold or hot, coffee or tea or soda or whatever. So I thought I would pass it on because it's really cute. But I know me, and I drink my water out of my big sippy thing, and I drink my soda out of a big, so it's a nice giveaway this week. You're gonna get the cup and the yarn and the needles. And so please make a comment down below, and I will continue to just do the random number generator and pick a comment and count down. And this time I thought that I would ask you a question to comment on. The question this time that I'm going to have you answer is, how many items did you knit this year for gifts? Doesn't have to just be for Christmas, but did you knit somebody a birthday gift? Do you do gift knitting? That is your question to answer this week. In order to be involved in the drawing, just put it in the comment down below, and I will draw for the next podcast. And then I want to share that at the holiday, Christmas, I had some pictures taken with Cody. My husband took them. They're not very good. Several of them, my mouth was open and my eyes were closed. I asked Kylie and Stevie to do it, and they left and we forgot. And I wore my green holiday dog dress that I got at Kohl's for $3.99. That has little dogs on it. It says Yappy Holidays. And I sat at the fireplace and just took some pictures with my dog because Cody has cancer and he's going to pass. And I don't have pictures with him. I have tons of pictures of my dog because I love him with my whole heart. He follows me everywhere I go. But I don't have pictures with him. So he had a rash under his armpits a month ago or whatever. And, you know, he was licking. And so I looked and I was like, oh my gosh, he has a rash. So I took him into the vet and she said to me, he has lived longer than any dog I've ever diagnosed with cancer. How fortunate are we? He gets treats every day. He's still walking. He walked with me yesterday. He ran with Ross this morning. His back end is terrible. He fell yesterday on the hardwoods. His back end just goes sliding out from under him. He got up. He wouldn't bear weight on his back leg for about 5 minutes. And my husband's always like, Cori, you're so dramatic and emotional about this. Because I was like, Ross, he was vacuuming. I'm like, Ross, Cody fell. He comes in and, you know, half an hour later, he's trotting around here like nothing happened. I am dramatic and emotional about my dog, but I'm going to put in a couple pictures because I want to put them in while he's alive and just share that the bond you can have with an animal who loves you wholeheartedly. Like, he can be out in the garage with Ross for an hour and he can come in and he will run to the living room. Mom, I haven't seen you in so long. You know, and he wants me to pet him and he like just in that moment, he's just like, Mom, he loves me so much. And I had never had an experience like that with a dog. I never loved dogs growing up. I didn't even like our dogs. I thought our dogs were total slob fests. I didn't like the dogs we had. They were my brother's dogs. Then my brother hunted, and so he had a hunting dog. I just was not all in. And Stacy, now we're all in, right? Like, and everyone should love their child more than any other person in the world, and everyone should love their dog more than every other dog in the world, right? If you're a mother, your child should be the best. And you should brag on them and tell good things about them and love them up with all your heart. Dogs included. So anyway, I am going to add a new quote to the end of the podcast from here on out. I was reading the book by, Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez, who's a Minnesota author, a while back, and I jotted down this quote, and it's been in my phone for a while. And as we start the new year, you know, I think one of the biggest things that you could have as a resolution is to just be kind. Just be kind, right? I'm not always kind. I get very angry when people do not drive the way I think they should drive. Especially when they don't go through the stoplight and I would have gone and they're 5 feet in front of me and they don't go because they could see it's going to turn yellow. But I think that we could just be kind. And the quote is, grace costs you nothing. I'm going to leave you all with that this week, that it just doesn't cost anything. In the moment, your little bit of spitfiredness that you have in there wants you to get angry or be frustrated with a person or to be mad or to not like their attitude or their politics or their religion or their looks, whatever it is. We just need to make that all go away, right? Grace costs you nothing. I love you all. Come in for your hug. I hope that you had an okay holiday season. Hope that it was not too stressful or too upsetting for anyone. And I will see you again in 2 weeks with a shorter podcast and hopefully some plans for some different content for you for the new year. Bye.